Hey everybody! Sad news that on Friday, my friend AC Transit, longtime AC Transit board member, and even longer time friend Chris Peeples passed away. And what hurts is that I just interviewed Chris a month ago. Um, Ironically, the topic was the passing of another Oakland lawyer, Dan Siegel. And so this time I found out about Chris's passing, and what for anybody else but me would be an odd way, but unfortunately, with for me, it's it's normal. I got an email, an automatic email report of comments posted on my YouTube channel, Zenny62, and one of them reported that Chris passed away. And so I, you know, that's how I found out about it. I was just blown away. Um, because Chris was just, he's like a brother. He's a brother, but also, as I told him, he's old enough to be my dad. And he represents a number of Oaklanders, like Barbara Schock, uh, formerly Barbara Schaff, Libby Schaff's mom, who was once our mayor of Oakland and longtime friend, passed away now 2 months ago, roughly. And her memorial is on the 23rd of this month, and I do plan to be there. Unless of course something happens where I have to be here for mom. So, but it's just tough because these people made up my informal family. Not people that I have a blood relationship with, but people I have friendships with that are so long they feel like blood relationships. Uh, 3 decades is a long time to know anybody, and the people you think about from the perspective of, if you think about something, you'll call them, or you have a thought. And what happens is that when you tie together all of these folks, they make up a tapestry of what, in this case, Oakland was and how Oakland is. And but also people who helped me define, when I would think about it, who I am, right? In many different ways. Um, I call Chris an influencer because he was a smart freaking dude. And he had a way of putting things that, uh, pure and simple, was such that you um, you had to stop and give pause and think about what it was he was saying, uh, for some reason, either because it was just plain, completely thoughtful in detail, which all of his explanations were, or because on top of that you agreed with it, which sometimes I did, or because in the other case I didn't agree with it, and sometimes, I was excitable in my re- return, as was the case with respect to something I would say or present to him, in reverse, right? So, uh, but we had a lot of great, great discussions, and most of them were held at a place called GayLords. And GayLords was a place that was on 41st and Piedmont Avenue in Oakland. It was an ice creamy, GayLords Ice Creamery. And it used to stay open, at one point, stay open until I think almost 2 o'clock in the morning. We were never there that late. I have been there that late, and then they shortened their hours. Then unfortunately gave way to the pandemic, as have so many Oakland businesses. Um, but we had a ton of coffees there, and it was just a lot of fun to talk about Oakland. And what did we talk about? Well, I'll give you a first of all. I think before I go there, I'm really sad that. Well, let me show you. Let me show you Chris, because that's the beauty of being a vlogger, right? You have true memories of what a person was like that make you think of interviews you did, videos that this person was in. And so a person like yourself can get a sense of who he was. Um, and uh, and here's one. I'm going to play one interview. It's about 6 minutes. Here we did at the Awaken Cafe, I think 9 years ago, around the time of this controversy regarding the AC Transit bus planned bus stop in front of the new Sproul's grocery store right across the street from Summit Bank. And there was a great deal of controversy about it because the Summit Bank people didn't want a bus stop right in front of their business. I was a banker, person who put their money in Summit Bank, and the people who were in Summit Bank were and still are my friends. They were at odds with Chris, unfortunately, and then Chris and I got into this battle, and Chris said some things about me that I think were, he knows they were not the right things to say, but there's something called the fog of war, right? Or in this case, the fog of ideological war. So anyway, what you're about to see happened after those exchanges, because we both realized something. We're friends, and we don't dislike each other. It wasn't he may have disliked what I thought or what he thought I thought, and vice versa, but we don't dislike each other. Anyway, here's that. I think what I've got to do, though, I've got to remember to do, is I have to put the video, the setting on, turn off echo cancellation so you can hear it. Otherwise, you can't hear it. So I just turned off echo cancellation so you can hear our exchange. Here it is.
At least 10 years, probably longer than that.
Longer than 10 years.
Yeah.
This is 2016. 10 years would be 2006.
Oh, no, a lot longer
So
than
it's
that.
right. So it's been about 20.
Yep.
23 years.
Something like that.
23 years. Wow. Over that time, Chris has been. Tell them all that you've been. You've been head of panel. Well,
I was always very active in neighborhood group movements.
At this point, we had known each other 23 years. This is 2016. That's what he's talking about.
In everything at panel. I've been the chair. I've been the
and tell my
general counsel.
viewers what panel stands for.
Panel is the Piedmont Avenue Neighborhood Improvement
Of Oakland.
It's of Oakland. It's the residential group around Piedmont Avenue in Oakland. PAMA is the Merchants Association. Panel is the residential group. And over the years, it's fluctuated. Some years it's more interested in zoning and development. Some years it's more interested in crime prevention and all that stuff. We spun off a group that supports the local elementary school. We've done a lot of that stuff. And for a while there was a pretty broad group of neighborhood groups that all came together in the neighborhood newsletter task force. Met at the public library and really had a chance to trade information and trade tips and trade all kinds of stuff throughout the whole city of Oakland. It was really, for a while there, it was really quite remarkable.
Yeah, that was the days of Jeanette Sherwin, right?
Jeanette Sherwin, Sanjeev Honda,
right?
All those folks, and they really had a very major impact on politics in Oakland.
Now, you're involved now in the AC Transit Board.
Correct. I've been involved in transportation for a very long time. I was always involved. I was involved in a couple of things. I've been involved in democratic politics forever. It means since I was a kid. I've been involved in some transportation issues for a very long time. Founded a couple of transportation groups, and in '97 there was an opening on the AC Transit Board, and I was appointed by the board of directors. And then I had to run in '98, and then I run again, and then that was to finish out John Woodbury's term.
Right, I remember him.
John, after me, John was the administrative assistant for Mary Moore. Then he left, worked as a planner for Alameda for a while, then went to an open space group that tried to do for the Bay Area parks and open space what MTC does for transportation. Try to have all the fights internal and then have a united front in Sacramento or in Washington trying to get money for a package of things that have been put together. And then he went off, and he's still working up there. He went to work for Napa County, basically to set up the equivalent of the East Bay Regional Park System. He worked for the county for a while, helped put together the parcel tax, that put together a funding source, and now technically he works for that independent park district, but he gets paid through the county because they've got accounting and they've got health care and all that stuff. But he still lives up on John Street. Still lives about 4 blocks away from us.
Tell my viewers, over the time that you are involved in have been to this date, and still are involved as an AC Transit Board member, what you've been able to do that maybe they don't know about as they take the transit system?
Well, we hope they know a little bit about it because we hope they're taking AC Transit pretty regularly.
Yeah.
Our fortunes have gone up and down along with the economy. Fortunately, right now they're up, and since I'm up for election in November, having our fortunes up, it's a good idea.
Oh, but I mean like a specific thing that you want people to notice, a specific initiative.
Well, one of my main initiatives has been our fuel cell bus program. We have the largest fuel cell bus program in North America. We've got 13 fuel cell buses, and you see them riding around. They got green tops and produce zero emission at the bus. And for about a quarter of the fuel we use, produce zero carbon well-to-wheel, because we're making about 65 kilograms of hydrogen a day using solar cells. The PG&E wheels on that power to Emeryville for us. In Emeryville, we use a proton electrolyzer and split up water. Water is H2O. You split it up, you let the oxygen float away, you compress the hydrogen, and then you use that to run the bus.
Hey, so in our next video, we're going to talk about the 30th and Broadway issue. Can you give my viewers a brief preview? Because we're going to do that video right after this.
Okay. We often have issues with merchants and other folks being concerned about the location of bus stops. And because of some stuff Oakland did, we had to move a bus stop. And the local merchant got concerned, and we've been sort of arm wrestling with them now for a couple of years. And we'll see what will happen at the Public Works Committee next week.
Okay, and that's going to be our second video, which will be linked after this one. Oh, we're at Waken Cafe enjoying the California salad, right?
California salad.
That was his idea.
California salad and root beer.
And root beer. It was his idea. A great idea at that. Okay, yes.
Yeah, and so that's how that, I mean, on video, that kind of conversation, that's the kind of conversation we would have normally. Less sort of an interview style, but, always about some issue of Oakland in policy. I remember he sent me this email that I recall answering back, and it went it went like this. He wrote it having to do with the whole matter of the recall of Oakland Mayor Shang Tao, and an interview that I did with Tim Dupuis, who was then and is now still the Alameda County Registrar of Voters. And so uh, it's so he wrote this to me, and I actually called him about it. I didn't, because it deserved a phone call. The way that in my mind, it deserved a phone call back. But what he wrote was, I'm watching Zenny. I'm watching your interview with Tim Dupuis on the Oakland election, and you think it's strange that Oakland Mayor Shang Tao, got most of Elisa Victory, was a challenger, also an Oakland civil rights attorney, votes, given that Shang and Elisa did not do a joint campaign the way Rebecca and Jean did back in, he was referring to then Oakland at-large council member Rebecca Kaplan and Oakland school board member at the time Jean Quan in 2010, when they joined up to do a kind of ranked choice voting strategy, the first of its kind. It's been replicated by a number of people since then, where they would say, "Hey, look, vote if you don't want to vote for me, number one, pick." In this case, it was Rebecca was saying, "Pick Jean number one, and then pick me number two, and vice versa." And it worked. Jean became mayor of Oakland. But then Chris goes on to write, "What you miss is that Alyssa and Shang were ideologically aligned. Alyssa favored government spending, taxing rich people and giving lots of money and benefits to unionized city employees. So did Shang, except to a lesser extent. So did all the mayoral candidates, but that is another matter. It's perfectly logical that most of Alyssa's voters should have Shang as their second choice, just as it's logical that many of Ignacio's voters would have Lauren as their second choice, despite the fact that they did not campaign together. It's a little strange that everyone was very close, but that can be explained by the fact that Shang and Alyssa were so close ideologically." Now, my return or response to that is very simple, because I made it again and again and again and again. It wasn't so much that they were ideologically aligned, but it was mathematically weird that exactly the same proportion of votes was transferred in terms of ranked choice voting, in terms of the runs, each and every time, without fail. I mean, the percentage was basically almost exactly the same. I'm sorry, folks, that's far different than, okay, proportionately, Alyssa gets more and all that. That's far different than having a calculation that basically is just when they may be a couple of percentage points away from each other. I mean, I'm sorry, that was weird. So that's the kind of conversation we have. Or there's another one where he actually posted on Oakland News Now about Howard Terminal. It's really lengthy. And I won't, bother you with those details because I put it in the body of the text, but I'll give you a taste of it by reading what he was saying regarding Howard Terminal, that wound up in the eyes of something called the East Bay, the East Oakland Stadium Alliance. But this was on this was written May 26, 2021, and posted at Zenny62 Media's blog, Oakland News Now, and he wrote, "Oakland, the proposed A stadium at the Howard Terminal site is completely unreasonable from a transportation point of view, and the EIR does not properly address the transportation issues. Also, the EIR does not properly address the sea level rise issues that will put the stadium and the streets that access it underwater before the end of the stadium's useful life. I do not have expertise in sports economics or in the economics of real estate development. I do have expertise in transportation. I have been involved in transportation issues for over 40 years. I have served on the board of AC Transit, the Alameda County Contra Costa District, the agency that provides bus service to Oakland and surrounding cities for 23 years. Although those comments are my own and may not represent the position of AC Transit. I regularly attend and sometimes speak at transportation conferences such as TRB, the Transportation Research Board, APTA, the American Public Transportation Association, UITP, the Union International Day Transport Public, CTA, California Transit Association, Revolution, and various university-sponsored transportation conferences. There's no reasonable way, Chris says, to get the 30,000 people that the A's hope will come to their baseball games at the Howard Terminal site to the site with either public or private transportation. Our regional heavy rail system, BART, is not within a reasonable distance of the Howard Terminal site. The rule of thumb in transportation is that people will walk 1/4 of a mile to a bus stop and 1/2 a mile to a rail stop. The West Oakland BART station is 1.4 miles from the Howard Terminal site, and it is not an inviting route to transverse. The Lake Merritt BART station is 1 mile away. Again, not the best walk. The 12th Street BART station is 8/10 of a mile away. If the station and the associated development is built at the Howard Terminal site, I assume that would be a pleasant walk, but it's still more than a 1/2 mile. And so he goes on with discussing the access and then he goes on. Then he says the gondola proposal is unrealistic. This is where they were talking about having the gondolas from, coming over from, I believe, Washington, and then going over and then basically landing at Howard Terminal in front of the ballpark. He says it's unrealistic to talk to anyone who owns a ski resort or has even worked at one. Cable gondolas have very limited capacity and are a maintenance nightmare. I doubt that the A's are going to commit to operating and maintaining a gondola system for the life of the stadium. Even if they do, it will only accommodate a small fraction of the 30,000 spectators the A's expect. There will also be problems with the geometry of getting the gondolas high enough to get over the downtown buildings and back down close to the stadium. And so, then he closes by saying, and I'm leaving some things out here, but I follow sea level rise issues because it has a substantial impact on transportation given the location of some of our freeways and railroad rights of way. If you look at page 15 of the report, Sea Level Rise of the San Francisco Bay Shoreline, which everybody should read, by the way, you can see that Howard Terminal and its surrounding streets up to the 880 freeway are in the risk zone. In other words, they will be underwater. That conclusion is confirmed by the LAO2 and the California Ocean Protection Council 3 sea level rise 3 he makes. Sea level rise makes Howard Terminal an inadvisable location for a baseball stadium with a capacity of 30,000 spectators. Now, see, the thing about it here is that the A's would have shot back, well, we have the same problem at the Coliseum. And so, Chris wasn't necessarily always right, but he had a good set of reasons that were layered with answers for the positions that he took. And if you cared about Oakland, if you paid attention to Oakland issues, Chris was a hell of a lot of fun to hang out with and talk with about stuff. And in that regard, and he took time to study it. You don't come up with the kind of delivery he has about issues related to Oakland transportation unless you bother to study them. And you have to remember, and he was on the AC Transit Board, and he wasn't appointed. He was elected. He beat, in 2008, for example, he beat Joyce Roy. He just clobbered Joyce Roy. I think something like got a landslide 64% of the vote. So people valued him. Chris was an influencer before social media influencers. He was an influencer because he did a good job of staying in his lane in terms of what he knew about. He would tell you, I know about this, but I don't know about that. And what he knew about, he had very, very, very sound reasons for the opinions that he held, and um, he always presented them in, well, almost always, he almost always presented them in a way that was reasonable. The one time that I got him was really on the whole issue of the bus transit matter, and I felt that AC Transit was really imposing their will on Summit Bank, poor business organization, in favor of Sproul's, and they were trying to force the bus stop on Summit Bank, and whereas there was more than enough land on the Sproul side to have the bus stop, but Sproul didn't want it there, and so they'd rather push it on Summit Bank. And if you would go just across the street, because you had, this is Broadway, and that's, 29th, right? And if you go across the street, just across 29th, you go from this white sidewalk to this narrow sidewalk, even through to today. All right. And particularly in those days, you had the sad growth of the Oakland homeless problem, where sometimes there were people who were sleeping right in the doorway of the Summit Bank employee entrance. And Summit Bank is not a big company. So, it was, they were freaking out about it. And so, and so on top of that, the bus stopped right there, and the fumes were there, and the people would crowd up, and next, and all that stuff. So there was more space to accommodate those crowds right across the street at Sproul's, and it was, if they formed a nice plaza. And it made no sense to me. I made my own video about it. It made no sense to me that AC Transit and Chris would want to push all that on poor Summit Bank. So that's what that was about. That was the one time he and I really had an ideological difference that boiled over into name calling. And but not. But even then, it wasn't like we were. He said some things that were a little too, but then I shot back with some things that were a little. But I think the reason why what brought us together at Awaken Cafe was the realization that we're friends, that I really do see him as type of a father figure because of his age, and I believe in respecting my elders, and I didn't want to come across the way I was compelled to come across, because I wanted my point of view heard, right? So that was a great moment in our relationship, and it was a great moment in terms of reminding me of what makes Oakland tick. You have a lot of people who just passionately care about the city, and those folks, including Chris and others, I met originally at Oakland Sharing the Vision, and that was October 11th of 1991. That brought together 2,000 Oaklanders to the downtown Oakland Convention Center, Marriott Convention Center, for 2 weekends of meetings to develop a set of goals and objectives that really did wind up directing Oakland's future for the next arguably 15 to 20 years. And all this happened. You have to remember, all these folks that we're talking about, they are pre-internet. I'm basically pre-internet in my education. The internet didn't come along until, for me, 1993 with AOL, and then 94 and so on. And I made my first website in 1998 using Adobe Front Page. And so there's a different way of exchanging that has to do with seeing somebody before you. Okay, you're talking to them on the phone, but you're still hearing their voice. You're not so much reading their words. And that ushered in the reading of the words on a site, a platform, and a different kind of behavior. And so you could react to what someone wrote without ever meeting them to hear their words in person or on a telephone, and it's different. Also, it produces what a number of people have said is I would say a less granular and less patient way. It's almost push button, and you see something, you answer back quickly, and so that brings a whole new set of expectations, right? So that's going off on that. So anyway, it's a very sad day. I just am going to see what others may have written about Chris, because it just sort of hit me at a time when, this last few days, when I've just been tied up with a bunch of things, associated with my mom and business, and so I had to give pause to appropriately remember my friend and give him his due. I'm supposed to do another show tomorrow, which is really today, with Oakland Mayor, my friend and former boss, Oakland Mayor Elihu Harris, and talking about Chris. And so hopefully we can get together and do that tomorrow. If not, So yeah, I've got my 59 minutes. I think there's Chris Peeples, Christopher there, but he called himself Christian. And other than my post, I don't see any other. Well, there's something here that I think I'll put over here other than what I wrote. But I'm on Twitter now, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the Twitter page that I'm reading in the screen here so you can see what I'm reading right now. And there. Yeah, there it is. And then I'll go and I'll enlarge it for better view. And then one more. And then one again. State Senator, former Berkeley Mayor Jesse Arguin wrote, Chris was a giant in public transit advocacy with an unmatched passion for sustainable, community-driven transportation. I'm grateful for his 28 years of exemplary service on the AC Transit Board of Directors, and will miss him dearly. And that's the one. I can't see anything else here. What's the latest is what else here? Oh, I don't see anything. Well, yeah, that's from Jesse. That's me. About Dan. And other than me, I don't see anybody else or anything else. That's unfortunate. But hey, Chris deserves to be remembered, and I don't want him to go quietly into heaven. I want people to understand what he's done. So I think, having said that, let's read what AC Transit posted here. And AC Transit wrote the following. Okay. And then I'll get to some other secrets of that I can share in the wake of Chris's passing, that have to do with mutual friends, in particular Sanjeev, who is a great friend of ours, and we talked about Sanjeev Honda a lot. Anyway, I read that part, and the full press release is here, and I'll just read the full press release rather than. Okay, yeah, it is with profound sadness that I think what I'll do, the Alameda Transit, excuse me, the Alameda Contra Costa Transit District AC Transit Board of Directors announces the passing of Director H.E. Christian Peeples, lovingly known as Chris. Director Peeples leaves a legacy of service to the people of the East Bay as one of the longest serving board members in our transit district's 65-year history. Director Peebles joined the board in 1997 as an at-large director, beginning a remarkable 28-year journey marked by dedication and vision. Excuse me. He was more than an elected leader. He was a true pioneer in environmental stewardship, passionately driving the adoption and advancement of AC Transit's zero emissions bus technologies. His commitment ran so deep that he rolled up his sleeves alongside mechanical staff to learn the complexities of hydrogen and fuel cell technologies. This practical experience, combined with his passion for sustainable transit, earned him the reputation of a trusted expert. Transit agencies from around the world frequently sought his guidance and insights as they navigated the complex transition from conventional fleets to cutting-edge hydrogen fuel cell buses. Beyond his groundbreaking work in sustainability, Director Peeples was a heartfelt champion for the community. He stood shoulder to shoulder with grassroots groups like AC Transit or AC Bus Riders Union, Alliance for AC Transit, and others, always ensuring that the voices of everyday riders were heard and valued. His active role in committees like the General Manager's Access Committee and various interagency groups showed his genuine commitment to inclusion and meaningful change. Even as a ham radio enthusiast, he passionately worked to keep this vital technology alive, ensuring the public could remain connected during emergency events when all other systems may fail. Quote, Chris was instrumental in encouraging me to step into public service, and in his refreshingly unconventional spirit, what I like to call a bold, nonconformist approach to problem solving, left a lasting mark on all of us. His deep institutional knowledge as an attorney and policymaker challenged the status quo and sparked groundbreaking innovations at AC Transit. Most recently, the debut of Zero Emission Bus University. Chris cared deeply, not just for our riders and the communities he served, but also for our employees, tirelessly advocating for their well-being and the advancement of our pension system. We have not only lost a treasured board colleague, but our entire region has lost a compassionate public servant who devoted nearly 30 years to uplifting the lives of low-income communities, people of color, and immigrants, elevating the marginalized voices he was determined to make heard, said Board President Diane Shaw. As we remember Director Peeples, we honor not only his accomplishments, but the tenacity, care, and spirit he brought to every public meeting and decision. His legacy is one that will continue to guide and inspire the East Bay. And I really pointedly need to say Oakland, more so than just the East Bay. Now, Chris, among other things, was a good man. He was a friend to Sanjeev Honda. Those of you who don't know who I'm talking about, never heard of Sanjeev. Sanjeev was a journalist who had a newsletter, a very popular newsletter. I think he started basing a news service, but unfortunately, for reasons I never really nailed down, I tried to some degree with Chris, but I think even he was unable to, or maybe unwilling, I think maybe unable to help close the information gap we were both discussing. But Sanjeev got to a point where he Sanjeev was claimed to fame, basically, was coming to city council and pointing out what the city of Oakland didn't do with respect to some aspect of the city charter, some responsibility. And he made excellent points about it. Whatever was going on in his background was such that over time, as the years went on, he became more agitated in his presentation and more apparently frustrated, and that carried over into other aspects of life. When I first met Sanjeev, he had a condominium in Emeryville, the new high-rise Emeryville Towers, and apparently he was doing quite well financially. Had a beautiful girlfriend. Whatever happened that took him out of that situation, he wound up living with Chris, and they were friends for quite some time. And Chris sustained, Sanjeev's income problems, and really hung in there with him. He really did. And so, and it's unfortunate that Sanjeev went the way that he did, but I, in the passing of Chris, I look at it, the book two of them, as part of a group of people in Oakland that were a family of people that really came to form the policies and programs that have shaped Oakland to date. For example, Chris was instrumental in the creation of Panel, the Piedmont Avenue Neighborhood League, and among other activities. And of course, I mentioned Sanjeev, right? And of course, if you think about Barbara Schaff, she was the volunteer coordinator for the Oakland Symphony, and then Barbara's daughter Libby became mayor. She was going to run for treasurer. Now she's actually not going to run for treasurer. But all of these people and many more were more than heavily involved in the policies that shaped Oakland. And they always came to council. But I also have to say they were some of the nicest people you'd ever want to meet in your life. And I've been very blessed to know them. And it's just a very sad period of life that particularly the folks who are old enough to be my parents, are leaving and have left. That's the hardest part of the whole doggone thing. Yeah. So I will say it differently. For those listening who remember Chris, say something, write something. Please do. The man contributed a great deal of his time and care to the objective of the betterment of life for those who didn't have a lot with respect to transportation in Oakland and, yes, the East Bay. And I think he deserves many remembrances. Hopefully the AC Transit Board will take up some time to do that, as well as others. All right. Thank you. That ends the stream. It won't be the last one.